Hey guys, I am Game Advisor and welcome back to another Icarus update video. Today is a big deal. They did some huge rework to how mining works in the game, so let's go ahead and get started. Now, first up is by far the biggest feature in this entire update and what it is entirely focused around, and that is the deep ore mining drill. So this patch will introduce a new way to gather resources. The deep mining drills, which you set up over mineral deposits of gold, copper, iron, etc. They can really just be anything, which I've done some research on, and they're found in larger caves, can now have a drill put over them to give you a slow trickle of resources. Tapping these deposits will then provide you a long-term source of resources. This is huge news. This is very big. This is a huge deal. I know tons of players have been complaining that on some of the longer missions, they really have no way to gather resources, as once the ore is gone, it is gone. And sometimes on those smaller maps, you really have to mine almost every single cave to get all the resources you're going to need. This is going to solve that problem. This is something I think the game desperately needed and is a huge plus and a huge win for the Icarus community and the Icarus development team. It's also worth mentioning that there is actually two different tiers of the drill. You have the tier 3 variation, which is going to just run off biofuel and will go a little bit slower. Then you have the tier 4 version, which is going to require a constant source of power, but is also going to mine a little bit faster. Now, what I think is interesting here is usually once you reach tier 4, you're basically done with the mission. But what this sets up for us is that as we get new DLCs, we get new content, maybe even eventually add in a tier 5, this is going to give us an incredibly useful tool for getting a large amount of resources while you're relatively AFK, or basically just not paying that much attention to it. So what I'm thinking we can do is we're going to set up a solar panel outside when we get to that like tier 5 stuff eventually that they hopefully put in the game. We'll have to see if that ever even happens, or get to DLC where you actually can use all these resources or missions that you just actually need them. But the point is, an electric drill can essentially be an infinite source of resources by simply just setting it up on top of the ore node and then running a cable outside to a solar panel. And while it will only operate in the day, of course, if that works, you essentially then have an infinite source of power for that drill. I really hope they add batteries into the game at some point, because then you could just set up like 1 or 2 solar panels. We don't know how much power it takes yet, but the point is you could set them up, let it charge the battery during the day, and then it would run indefinitely, giving you an indefinite number of resources. I think this is really, really big again, guys. This is the only thing in the game that basically had a limited amount of resources you could gather, which was ore. Animals respawn, trees respawn, vegetables seem to respawn, and having this is just incredibly important for the longevity of the game. I also just think it's a really cool feature, if I'm being honest with you. But with that being said, let's move on to some of the other stuff they did talk about. So basically, they did some talent improvements, and what these really boil down to are mostly going to be the bow tree talents. So apparently they reworked the bow tree talents, which they went ahead and reworked some of them so that they work with crossbows. I really don't think this was necessary, but to be fair, there really wasn't any talents if you were a crossbow player that you could choose. So I'm glad they added this in for those players who do enjoy actually using the crossbow. Personally, if you're trying to play meta, it doesn't really matter, but I'm glad it's there for the players who wanted it. They also did fix another bug where the discount blades wasn't applying to steel knives, but again, not that big of a deal, as well as making beer and wine apply with the longer lasting effects talent, which just made your food last longer. Now that's basically everything they did. There's a few little weird bug fixes. I guess there was an issue people were having where tooltips would be shown off screen in some cases. I'm not really sure why that's an issue, because you had to have your options menu open, but again, I haven't experienced that, so who knows. I'm glad they fixed it for people having issues. They also changed the repair materials for the spear to sticks instead of wood. I'm assuming they're talking about the very first spear, which makes sense, but again, not really that big of a deal for most players. And they also optimize the performance of several auxiliary light sources in the game, which again, even better. I'm glad they're optimizing the game. I know a lot of players still struggle to run this if you're on a relatively old PC, meaning that you don't have probably like a 1070 graphics card or newer. You're going to have some issues with the game and can't run it on max graphics. So I'm definitely glad they're working on optimization for those people. With all that being said though, I'm Game Advisor. I hope you guys found this information useful, and if you want to see new updates, new content, tips videos, guides to do missions, and other survival game content, please consider subscribing to our channel and maybe joining our community Discord. We have tons of people in there looking to play Icarus, and we have tons of people in there just wanting to hang out. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I am Game Advisor, and I'll see you next time.